Here's a fascinating clip from Tucker Carlson a couple of nights ago. I was on the 28th when all this started in Minneapolis. And Tucker talks about all the things wrong with the government, but that we suck it up, that we accept it, and that we're civilized. And it's a very strange, to me, kind of a strange talk that he presents here about the unhappiness and the things he sees wrong being done by the government, but that, yeah, we just have to suck it up and accept it. And it's civilized, there's no violence and, it's passable. So you kind of understand how that works, unhappy with the government, but it's not so bad that we just can't carry on peacefully. And of course he disparages the looting and the rioting, but he's unhappy too that the police just seem to walk away. They're not defending anybody. The fire department's not there. They just walk away and let this happen. And I was thinking that I'm not a pro-government guy, you all might know. I mean, to me, they get a hold of us real early in school and lock us up and drum stuff into our heads to the point where by the time we're out, we're ready to enlist and run up a hill shooting and screaming and killing people and getting shot. I mean, not everybody has that mindset, but the flag, Pledge of Allegiance, flyovers, and so on is all to cultivate a love for the country, and they do it everywhere. Every country does it. They name streets and buildings after presidents and mayors, and it's always government officials. And I notice on the freeway, and not to, they dedicate the freeways to CHP, which is fine. I'm not against anybody. I'm not putting anybody down here, but it seems to me that when people get in power, they act in, quote, is appropriate. Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely, brings out the worst in people. And the fact that you do work for the government affords a lot of protection. They look after one another. That's why this horrible incident that triggered all this, the putting a knee in a man's neck until he dies and then leaving it there, because there's a feeling of impunity. In fact, I actually was a health inspector a long time ago. I had a badge, looked just like a marshal's badge. And every time I was a young guy, I got pulled over a lot for driving too fast and running stop signs. But it was cool that I had that badge because I put the license next to it. And I'd say a dozen times I got stopped, only one cop gave me a ticket. They'd see the badge and let me go because it's a club, and you ain't in it, as George Carlin would say. So, well, I'm going to start this. I'm starting to lose my train of thought, but I'll just start this. You see how strange this is, that the doesn't like the government, but as long as we suck it up and do our dutiful uses that word. And, well, I was thinking when it comes to looting, with all that's gone on, to me, this coronavirus is, you can have your own belief, but to me, it's just some kind of tool to invoke fear and allow the government to have even more control, fearful people, and also divide and have us 6 feet apart so there's no camaraderie. We're afraid, suspicious, crazy. I got the Hong Kong flu in '68. It was much worse than this thing, and there was no reaction like this. Nothing like it. And I was thinking about the looting. Well, these looters, that's a bad thing. It's a bad thing. But they're taking property. And to me, all what's going on here, the government is looting our freedom. More important than property. Fuck the property. Freedom is more important. And they've taken it away. And the way it's all set up, we just don't have a chance. I wish I could do a George Carlin routine, but I'll leave that up to him. Anyway, let's play this and you can see how crazy it is.
If you've been watching any of the coverage from Minneapolis today about what happened last night, you know perfectly well that what's happening on the streets there, no matter what it may look like, is actually a quest for justice. It's a long overdue search for answers by legitimately frustrated protesters who, if we're going to be honest about it, have been oppressed for so long they can no longer stand idle. What you're seeing in Minneapolis is democracy in its purest form. Effectively, it's a political rally. Here was a representative seen last night.
This is literally the craziest stuff I've ever seen right now. This is Target right now.
Now, wait a second, you may be thinking. That didn't look like a political rally. Those people look like looters. They were smashing cash registers with hammers to steal other people's money. Well, yes, technically they were doing that. And yes, as a faction.
I got to interrupt here. Isn't that what the IRS does? I've said in other videos, the income tax only took place in 1913. The country didn't have an income tax. And if you think about it, income tax, there's a measure of slavery involved with the income tax in the sense that the portion of your labor that's taken from you by force by the government is that percentage of your slave labor.
Matter, they were smashing the cash registers because they had already stolen everything else in the store. So no, it doesn't look like conventional political activism. But before you judge them, keep in mind it could have been far worse. It's not like they were doing something immoral, like protesting Gretchen Whitmer's coronavirus lockdowns in Michigan. That would have been a different story.
Well,
Black people's right to protest is secondary to white people's right to be in.
He's right. Tucker's right to point out the hypocrisy.
Armed protest with long guns, terrifying looking war weapons.
This is how the protest of Floyd's death ended up. Police in riot gear flooding the streets with tear gas and shooting rubber bullets into the crowd. Another example of how this pandemic has been a kind of black light exposing all the inequalities in American life.
That's the meme that's going around right now with the cops, with the black kid on the ground saying hello to the white guy in camo with the AK-47 and the mask who was protesting in Michigan.
Tucker's
that when it's
making
white people with guns and they're out and they're angry and their faces with cops.
Didn't see any of that.
Everybody's civil.
It's as if some people are accorded the right.
I'll skip through this part. It's just Tucker pointing out the hypocrisy. Shoot the white folk. Okay, start
Actually
it.
profit from. Therefore, those facts must be suppressed. For example, practically every day we're told that white cops are a mortal threat to black men, and some are, obviously. It's what started this whole thing. A black man was killed by the police. It's awful. But what are the national numbers on this? Well, actually, we know the answer. A study from last year found that white police officers were less likely to shoot and kill non-white suspects.
I'm going to skip ahead a little bit.
Officers were.
You get the picture.
In any given year, tell you. Imagine if you saw a sign saying white-owned business in windows. You would be horrified, and you should be. You'd know it was a race riot. We've had a lot of those in this country through the years, and there is nothing worse than that. But Minneapolis has decided to just let their riot happen and damn the consequences. Watch the city's police chief explain why he doesn't plan to do anything at all to stop rioters.
So what you're saying is it's too dangerous for police to directly confront the looters, so you've made the decision to maybe let that site go for now and focus on keeping the rest of the neighborhood as safe as possible?
You think about it, why do you have police if they don't do anything, if they run?
Several hours here, Molotov cocktails thrown at them, rocks and other projectiles, and so obviously their safety is paramount, and so
what a
I
joke.
don't want them going into an area where they're at risk of
Plenty of them
themselves.
around to give you a parking ticket.
Obviously, the safety of officers is paramount, announces the chief. The interviewer says nothing. But in fact, that's not at all obvious. In fact, it's perfectly backward. Society's first concern is the safety of citizens, especially the weakest citizens. That's why we have police in the first place, to protect people who cannot protect themselves, the public. Not.
So I'm going to skip ahead, but you can see Tucker's rightfully unhappy with the whole thing, with the government. And now we'll get. Uh-oh.
Heavy lifting. And guess who that is? Who is that, Chris?
White people.
The funny thing is, as we often point out, these are the very same people who claim they're fighting your racism. Okay. But the problem is much bigger this time than mere hypocrisy. We're very used to that. This problem is far more ominous. Here it is in 3 sentences. There are 320 million of us in this country. A lot of us are very different from one another, yet we all have to live together. In fact, most of us want to live together. But suddenly our leaders are making that dangerously difficult. David Webb hosts Reality Check with David Webb, and he joins us tonight. David, thanks so much for coming on. I don't think anybody.
David Webb looks pretty tired. I like the guy, but I can just see that he's the strain's catching up to him. He's a good man. But anyway, that's enough. Thank you for watching.
To whom we look